In March 2023, the Circuit of the Americas played host to the NASCAR Cup Series, 39 drivers competing for the dub and a berth on victory lane, though they weren't all the usual suspects, for there were two Formula One world champions competing that weekend. One of them was Jenson Button, who did well enough despite not being bestowed with the greatest of great material, and a couple of positions further up the field was the other world champion, and the number 91 Chevrolet Camaro, Kimi Räikkönen. Kimi was there courtesy of the Project 91 campaign, which was aimed at luring international talent to the series, expanding the profile of NASCAR, and proving to the elite drivers of the world that there was more to stock car racing than just turning left and punching Joey Logano. Kimi withheld the urge to do that, and instead put on a decent enough showing that day in Austin. For Justin Marks, the owner of Trackhouse Racing who the Project 91 campaign runs under, this was just the start. He wanted to bring in the best of the best from around the world. But obviously, NASCAR Cup cars are a long way away from a Formula One car. I mean, it's like comparing Usain Bolt to Roger Ebert. So the next time Project 91 would roll a car out for the race, Kimi Räikkönen would not be behind the wheel. Instead, they recruited someone else entirely. Over in the Supercars series in Australia, Big Brody Kostecki was looking set for victory, and then his rearview mirrors showed him a truly horrifying sight. He was being hounded by the Red Bull Camaro, his championship rival, and right now, his worst enemy. After some convincing, he sailed by to take the win, his third win of the year. It would have been his fourth had someone not left too much ice in his car in the opening race in Newcastle. But either way, over in this part of the world, the sight of this man winning races was just way too freaking common. It was kind of a procession. He would be a little bit mid in qualifying to give you some hope, then he would opt for a, shall we say, interesting tyre strategy to give you even more hope. But then in the dying laps he would shatter everyone's dreams, scythe on through, and take his inevitable win. Just the year prior, he won 21 out of 34 races, a new record, and an insane one given how competitive this taxi series is. And of course he's from New Zealand, not a part of Australia, and yes, we are a real country, and yes, this accent is real too. I'm sorry. Anybody that knows anything about motorsport knows that this dude can win in almost anything. GT cars? No problem. Sprint cars? Sure thing. Rally cars? Yeah, that too. Open wheelers? What do you think? Drifting? Yaha. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Put him in anything and he will make it dance. I can yak on for ages about the stuff that this guy has done, but the crucial thing that you need to know at this juncture is that to drive, supercars were the closest thing to a cup car, at least at that high level. So picking the creme de la creme of the field to try out these monsters was the logical thing to do, I think, and Justin Marks knew this too. On the 18th of May 2023, it was announced that Trackhouse would use the Project 91 entry to give a NASCAR Cup Series debut to Shane Van Gisbergen, or as some of the more obtuse Americans called him,
whatever his name is,
SVG?
Van Burger, I don't know, hamburger.
Yes, so Shane Van Hamburglar would be getting his debut in NASCAR. For some people in this part of the world, this was a long time coming. Almost an inevitability if that doesn't sound way too pretentious. But of course, this was just a one-off event. Project 91 had only been run twice previously, and both times by Kimi Räikkönen. This really was a once-in-a-blue-moon affair, and right from the start, Marks and the team at Trackhouse knew exactly where to make it happen. For the first time in the history of NASCAR, a race would take place on city streets. I know. The sophisticated racers over in Europe had been racing on streets since, well, film existed. But hey, late bloomer or not, at least these guys got the ball rolling at long last. The track started on South Columbus Drive before hanging a left onto East Balbo, then right onto South Lakeshore, where the bumps and the kink in the road could unsettle anybody who got a little bit too romantic with the throttle pedal. Then there was a double right-hander that took the cars back onto South Columbus, down onto the longest straight on the circuit, before reaching pretty much the exact point of turn 1, when they would turn left and go back on to East Balbo, effectively giving the track a mirror image effect. Then the track would squiggle around some more, running over every bump the fine folks of Chicago could muster, then onto East Jackson Drive before turning right again and onto the front straight. And that was a lap. Seems an easy track, but considering there wasn't much in the way of runoffs, and no one had any data of this track apart from a laser scan version on iRacing, the teams and drivers were heading into this weekend blind. Well, almost all of them. Very few of those drivers had ever driven on a street course before. None of them, really, in a racing car quite like this. Well, almost none of them. See, that Supercar series has a calendar where almost half the tracks they travel to are street courses. Shane van Gisbergen, or SVG or the Giz for those linguistically challenged, was used to this type of environment. This would have played right into his hands, and he did have some time testing the car in the days leading up to the race, with extensive preparation at Trackhouse. But then again, it shouldn't have been a walk in the park. Regardless of the inexperience on street courses, the drivers of the Cup Series were still good. Really damn good. Don't let the stereotype of rednecks running around in circles fool you. All these drivers can pedal a car, and a few of them are lethal on road courses even by the highest standards. And they have to be, given how there have been more and more road courses added to the schedule in the recent years. I mean, for reference here, look at the likes of Jenson Button, Kimi Räikkönen, and Daniel Kvyat coming over to the series in the last couple of years. They didn't win anything, so even with SVG's extensive experience on street courses, there was no guarantee he would win, or even break the top 10. I know, it kinda sounds far-fetched in hindsight, but my point remains. Those NASCAR Cup drivers are no joke. And so, on Saturday afternoon, practice got underway for the Grant Park 220, when the checkered flag had fallen, and the results were posted. The whole of the field in unison proclaimed, "Oh, Van Gisbergen was leading the way by 3/10 over Denny Hamlin. He had hit the ground running, exactly what he needed to do, and now all eyes were on him heading into qualifying. Onlookers were overawed by his ability to hang it close to the walls and the island brush dance he performed on the pedals under brakes. All of this translated into speed, and that in turn translated to third on the grid. By the time qualifying was done, some would have been a little bit gutted by this.
Oh, come on, not pole position?
And yeah, with the speed he had shown, this was a slight letdown. For others down the grid though, it gave them a little bit of hope, but those that were all too familiar with his winning ways, far from concerned. We all kind of went,
Oh shit, here we go again.
Race day came, and so did the rain. You know what they say in Chicago, you don't like the weather? Wait an hour. And that's pretty much what NASCAR did. The race was delayed by an hour, but eventually the flood passed and now they went racing. Immediately, the wet weather conditions were catching people out. Pole sitter Denny Hamlin went off into the tire barriers. Eric Jones pulled off a 3-in-1 combo that included his teammate, although, as we'll see later, he doesn't need much help when it comes to finding the tire barriers. And Kyle Busch lodged his Camaro so far into the tire barriers that it took King Arthur to dig him out again. This brought out the pace car only a couple of laps into the race. Where was SVG in all of this? He was still in third, but now behind Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick. He kept a watching brief as Reddick and Bell fought over the lead, for those two could sense that they had a little bit of hope to take the dub that day. Their cars were going well, and they were driving well. A few laps later, someone who was not driving well, maybe having run out of drivers to fight, Noah Gragson slammed into the wall as well and bought out the pace car. Wouldn't be the last time we see that today. At the end of stage 1, Bell still led and Van Gisbergen was still in third. Jenson Button meanwhile was facing the wrong way, courtesy of an unhelping hand by Chris Buescher.
Poor guy just wanted to pit, damn it.
By this stage, most people were beginning to pit for slick tires, despite half the track still being underwater. Although wet tires, slick tires, whatever he was on, Noah Gragson knew that practice makes perfect and slammed into the same place in the same tire barrier again and brought out the pace car. Again, I can't say that this guy's race has been terribly great so far, or even his whole Cup career. Then again, Shane van Gisbergen's restart wasn't great either, completely asleep and fell behind Reddick, and then behind Kyle Larson, then behind Daniel Suarez. Unbeknownst to a lot of people watching, he felt that he had no grip, owing to low pressures in his tires. And then the comms stopped working, or at least stopped working properly. But also, truthfully, he was finding out real fast that these dudes can pedal a car good, both left and right. His drowning was stopped momentarily when Alex Bowman brought out 2 cautions, one for being punted into the Shadow Realm, and another for his engine developing a case of death. So, heading into stage 3, Shane van Gisbergen had stagnated in third, couldn't really keep pace with the leaders, and then got thrown down the order like a kid who got picked off for lunch money. Exactly how is this meant to be the greatest NASCAR debut in modern history? Well, there was still a long way to go in this race, and hey, if your hang-up is that he's only running third in the top tier of NASCAR in his debut, your standards may be a bit too high, and I doubt that's the first time you've heard that today. I mean, after all, you did click on this video. And besides, there was still plenty of time for him to prove his worth with 50 laps to go. Actually, half that. 25 laps to go. Thanks to that rain delay at the start, the Windy City was soon to be shrouded in darkness, and thus, NASCAR shortened the race to make sure that drivers were not going to be running around in the pitch black. Either that, or they wanted to cull the race before Noah Gragson had a chance to crash again. Although I'm not sure why they would need that, because after all,
race cars don't need headlights because the track is always lit.
you know what you get on this channel. With 25 laps to go, the race got back underway, except not in the order you might be expecting, because Shane van Gisbergen did make a pit stop along with the other leaders under that pace car. But not everybody did, with some banking on a shortened race on old tyres. That left a mad jumbled grid on the restart, with Justin Haley leading the way. Where was van Gisbergen? He was in 18th. With such a limited amount of laps left and a lot of ground to make up, SVG began making moves. And now it was like, oh, here we go. In one corner, he passed 8 cars. Although I will admit there were reasons behind that. Oh well, take them however you can. Except, thanks to NASCAR rulings, after the caution was thrown, all those cars in the makeshift downtown Chicago parking lot got their spots back for the restart, so SVG was thrown back down to 18th with even less laps remaining. He was going to need a little bit of luck. Some drivers ahead of him crashing would do the trick. Gragson crashed again. Serves him right for sporting this haircut. Nah, SVG was going to need someone more important to crash. Bell was left stranded on the side of the road after neglecting to brake for turn 1. Thrown down the order, it left one less car for SVG to pass. Make that 2 actually, since Tyler Reddick, the man running ahead of the Giz for most of the race, buried himself into the turn 6 tyre wall. With 20 laps to go, I happened to glance at the leaderboard out of curiosity to see where Shane was at this point. He was in 8th. He passed 10 cars in a little under 6 laps. That is a sufficient amount. And if he could maintain this high-octane math until the end of the race, well, I don't really need to spell it out for you, don't I? 15 laps to go and the race restarts. Shane begins making moves immediately. Austin Dillon, perhaps sensing the impending wave of doom looming large, starts pushing Haley for position. Yeah, he pushed too much. Somehow, remarkably, we avoided a caution, and now it was Haley leading, Chase Elliott 2nd, Kyle Busch 3rd, Logano 4th, and Shane van Gisbergen in 5th. Make that 4th. Make that 3rd. Yeah, you're all cooked now. There really didn't seem to be much hope for them. Shane van Gisbergen was closing at such a rate of knots that it seemed like an inevitability at this point. He was running over a second a lap faster. 9 to go. Elliott's rearview mirrors showed him a truly horrifying sight. He was being hounded by the enhanced health Camaro. Not for long though. Up to 2nd. He's all over the back of Haley. Down to turn 7. Down the inside. For the 308th billionth time today, the pace car was out after Martin Truex Jr.'s front brake rotors went on strike and left the 2017 champion to fend for himself, and Haley would get back his lead. Saved by the bell there. With 5 laps remaining, Shane just had to remain calm. Ish. Plenty of time to take the lead, but also plenty of time to mess it up. These Cup drivers are feisty on the restarts. There is a lot on the line for these drivers other than just pride, and they definitely don't want some dude to just walk in and steal their thunder. Unlike Valtteri Bottas, they will actually fight for their position. The restart. Turn 2. Down the inside. To the lead. For about 4 seconds. Haley kept him honest, ultra aggressive, and by the kink, he was back into the lead. But Shane saw that coming, performed the switchback, retook the lead, and from there, it was goodbye. All of what we just saw there, that was proper racing, something almost completely alien in Formula 1 nowadays. Yes, I may be disgustingly biased toward my fellow countrymen here, but this sort of stuff is the stuff that us racing fans live for. Jousting for the lead, for the win, for eternal glory. Although, for Justin Haley, however awesome he was in leading for as long as he did, and it was a good drive, there was just no way he was going to claw back van Gisbergen now. Not unless there was another caution. And luckily for him, that's exactly what he would get after Bubba Wallace sent a McDive bomb down into turn 1. The race was going to overtime. The sun was setting on Chicago, and streetlights were beginning to don the racetrack. The first street race in NASCAR Cup history. You would have to call it an overall success. Some great wheel-to-wheel, bumper-to-bumper action. For Shane, at that moment, might have been a little bit at peace with himself. He had already made an impression. To come in and perform like he's done now, whatever happens now, no one will forget that. And for Justin Marks, the Project 91 campaign was justified. It had served its purpose in a big way. It wasn't over yet though. He still did have to hold off Justin Haley and Chase Elliott, both of whom are desperate for a win this year, and both of whom are certainly worthy of one. The race restarted and nothing happened. He charged away, not looking in the slightest bit phased, and after 2 laps, Shane van Gisbergen crossed the line to win the Grant Park 220, the first New Zealander to win in the Cup Series.
Yeah, let's go.
The first Supercars graduate to win since Marcus Ambrose, and the first driver to win on debut since Johnny Rutherford in 1963. So how the hell did SPG win on debut in a series so competitive? Well, there were a variety of factors. First off, his experience. Yes, that does sound a bit of an oxymoron given it was his debut. It's a bit like those job listings where they ask for 3 years experience in a junior position.
Like, yeah, sure. Let me just get in my time machine real quick.
But of all the drivers in the field, his experience on street circuits trumped them all. After all, about half the circuits he races on in a year are street circuits. He knew just how close he could run to the walls and in cars like this. Because ultimately, these next-gen cup cars are not far off of what a modern-day V8 supercar is. Gone are the 4-speed H patterns, and in are the 5-speed sequentials. Independent rear suspension has come into play too. Very similar to what Shane is used to back in the land of kangaroos and AU Falcons. Having said that, there were a lot of differences that he had to get used to, so there is a bit of evening out to do there. Third reason behind his success? The team. Trackhouse are a good team. We have seen their successes with Danny Suarez and Ross Chastain. It is a good outfit that can win races and ride walls. So Shane had the material under him, but the fourth and perhaps biggest reason behind his success? Him. Now, after the race was done, drivers like Kyle Larson were worried that SPG was going to go back to Australia and proclaim how easy it was to win, and about how all the drivers in America suck, and that NASCAR is full of hicks and blah 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 blah. Well, this business of SPG making everyone look stupid is not a new thing. He does the exact same thing in the Supercar Series. He's just that damn good at driving anything he's ever given. Are there any other Supercars drivers that could do the same? I mean, Grapple. We've seen drivers from all across the world try their hand here. Very few find success, and you would imagine that with more miles to come, that Shane van Gisbergen can only get better. A lot of people out there question whether he could repeat these efforts again, or even be half as good on an oval. Some say even that it would be impossible. I mean, no doubt adjusting full time will take time, but impossible? Really? With what we've seen from this guy over the years, his adaptability, his versatility, is that really a question that you want answered? I don't know. Or maybe I've just jinxed him in a violent way. We've already had a glimpse into what he could do, and whatever happens from this day on, he'll always have this, the greatest debut in modern NASCAR Cup history.